As the title said, I want to integrate this cluster to work with this car. Of course, you see this cluster, it's on and currently it's working, but it's not fully integrated. First, I want to tell you how I got this cluster. No, it's not a sponsorship. I got this cluster from Facebook Marketplace and was the deal of the century. It was so cheap that I was not able to refuse it. So if you have questions about where to find it, which is the best seller, please don't ask me because I don't know. My luck was that the guy that ordered this cluster, he have an F15 with head-up display. And this version of cluster was not made for head-up display. He needed a different one. This one is a little bit cheaper than the one he needed. He went with this one, he mounted, and he had a bunch of errors and the head-up display didn't work. So, long story short, I have it. This cluster, it's wonderful. I love the graphics. Daytime, nighttime, it's perfect, no problems. But there is a but, or more than one, you will lose some functions. With this cluster, first thing you lose the CBS data. The CBS data is the information about the services that you will have on your car. And for example, in my case, it's an older car with plenty of miles. I can live without that. Probably when I will do the oil change, I will write down on a piece of paper and I will keep it in the glove box. That won't be a very big deal. But the most important thing, when you mount this on BMWs, you will lose all the warning messages. Absolutely everything. The only thing that is working is the check engine light in case if the error is present. If you have a headlight that is going out, or I don't know, washer fluid, something else, something like that, this cluster won't show you that. And you can say, yeah, but my infotainment, my navigation will tell me. No, wrong. The instrument cluster is reporting to navigation what to say. So if we go, for example, down here in check control messages, I don't have nothing. And at this moment, for example, I have the ignition switched on without the engine turned on. I will need to have a message there, ignition switched on. And with this in mind, I have a plan to try to make this cluster to work. My idea is to use a brain from an original cluster, mounted in parallel with this one, to keep it behind this cluster, and in that brain to have every single function working with this beautiful interface. I have here the original cluster from this car. You can see it's the one with the small display here. I don't want to destroy this cluster because this is the original cluster, and in case if in the future I want to sell this wonderful vehicle, I will restore it to the original factory settings. But I cannot use this type of cluster for my experiment because you can see the plug is directly on the main board, and the main board is big as the entire cluster itself. So for this I ordered another cluster from eBay. It's a new used cluster. It's the same type of cluster like the one I had on my car, but the only difference is this car is made in 2012 with that type of cluster. This cluster is from a similar vehicle, but it's made in 2015. So you can see it's a little bit different. The main brain, it's here on this board, and this will go and will make contact on this plug. You can see here this main processor. This is only for the LCD display for these electric motors and so on, so I won't need that. Also you can see here the difference between the plugs, the newer model and the older version, the newer version, the older version. They are like that because they are different hardware versions. My luck was that the seller have cut the wires, and because of that I have a plug with wires. I will need to connect a couple of wires. I have here power supply, CAN communication, exterior temperature sensor. It's very simple and very quick. Also I have the fiber optic plug with some fiber optic wires, that in case if I will need to use the fiber optic on this cluster, I'm able to do that, to do a loop. But I won't need to use the fiber optic because the fiber optic is only for the multimedia system, and it's used only when you scroll down your music library or between the radio station. You will see them pop up here on the cluster. But in my case, if I will use only the brain and will be hidden behind that cluster, I won't need that. This is the board that I will want to mount on the car. I want to remove the Eeprom memory from this cluster, and I want to erase the miles and the VIN number. I want to erase the miles because this cluster have a higher mileage than my car, and if I will mount this on the car and I will switch on the ignition, the CIS will import the higher miles, and I don't want to happen that. If this cluster had less miles than my car, won't be a very big problem. The moment when I will switch on the ignition, this cluster will import the higher miles. So, for example, if this will be a success story and you want to do the same thing, you can buy a used cluster with lower miles than yours and you can use it without doing anything else. But if you don't do the VIN number, you won't have the CBS data. So if you want to have the CBS data working, you'll have to do the VIN number. If you don't want to do that and you want it only for the error messages, you will need only a cluster with lower miles and the plug, of course. So with this in mind, let me start to butcher this board. So to power up the cluster, I will need 12 volts power supply. Something like that. I will have here two brown wires that are ground and one red with green that is plus. The nice thing about this cluster, if I will wake up the cluster, you see here half an amp, 6 watts, and a couple of seconds, wait for it, wait for it, 0, 0. So the cluster won't consume anything unless he is working. So my Eeprom memory, it's on the other side of the board. It's here. This one is the memory that I will work on. You can see it better here under the microscope. This one. So first thing, I will try to do a mark here to remember, but I can use this video to see which is the way for this memory to not mount it in the opposite way. Okay, let's see. I think 420 degrees Celsius it's enough. It's out. Now I need this laptop, this guy, this cable, and this bug. I need this beauty. Something like that. Okay, now I need to see pin 1, which one it's pin 1. So I use my microscope. So pin 1 is this one from here. Okay, on my tool, pin 1 is down here. Okay, so I do. I will start my laptop, if I will have battery. And like that, I also need the power adapter for the programmer. I will open the R270. To read this memory, I need to select it from here, MCU. I have on 160D. I'll hit OK. I will select the memory Eeprom and I will use 8 megabytes. I will hit read. Do you check pin state? Yes. Now it's reading the memory. And that's done. I will save it on desktop, save, and it's here. Okay, after reading, let me see if I'm able to modify the miles directly from here. I'll select 160D. I already have the miles here. 274,000 kilometers. It's around 170,000 miles. Change the miles, so I need to enter to 715. New miles. Let me do this number right. Yes. Yes, it's working. Let me see if something will change here. First two lines. I was not able to see it. Save. It says write successful. Okay, I can go with that, but I will also need to change the VIN, the vehicle identification number. So let me read again the memory. Meantime, I will erase. Oh, I will not erase. I will move them from here. The old information. Okay, so it's 58. Save is this one from here. Oh yeah, it's something different here. So from what I remember, on these two rows I had the VIN number, but here I cannot see it. But this is for the 6WA cluster. So this is not a 6WA, it's a lower cluster. And from what I see, only in one place I have the VIN number, D61. Okay, I will change this VIN number, 0D06412. Okay, so now I will save it. It's saved. Okay, so now I will load this file. It's 58. Open. Let's go down to make sure that is the correct one. 0, yeah, is the correct one. So now I will hit write. Yes. Okay, nice. Let me see. Something changed here? No, the miles are the same. Okay, now I can take the memory from here. So the memory will need to be mounted in this position, but I need first some flux. Perfect. After that I will start my soldering gun, 450 degrees C. Now I will wait for the temperature to go up. Okay, this was quick. Don't do that. Okay, next step with some hot air. I want to make sure that everything is okay. It seems to be okay. Pin 1 is here. I will clean it a little bit. I have some brake cleaner. Everything is connected. More solder than needed, but it's perfect. Let's see. Brown, it's ground, and this one is plus. Yeah, it's working. It's perfect. 9,000 miles. Now I need to mount it on the car. This cluster came with these two tools. So I'll use one on this side, second one on this side. Now I need to be a bit careful because this cluster is a little bit wider than the original one. Have these two corners. And the harness is quite long and I'm able to mount the cluster anywhere I want. Like so. And the power cable is going here. Okay, now switch on the ignition. Service indicator not available. Oh, I have the tamper dot. That is not good. But first I will code this cluster. I will code it on the car, and after that I will check to see what's wrong with the tamper dot. Vehicle information, let me see. Vehicle status. Yeah, instrument panel, set time and date. Try again, switch off the ignition. Switch on the ignition again. You see, ignition switched on. That is the message. These are the messages that this aftermarket cluster is not able to show you. And as you can see, the cluster already imported the mileage of this vehicle. I will connect the icon. Ignition is already switched on. Next, I will need to connect to this car. First thing first, I will use A-tool radar to see the IP. It's 8101. Next, I will open ESIS. I will connect with the car. F25, it's already selected because I used this in the past on this car. I will check the IP 8101. I will hit connect. F25, okay. I will read the FA. I will activate the FA. I will read the VCM. And now I will go down to select my cluster. FRM, head unit, ICM, combi. And you can see here combi have no CAFD file. So I will select the cluster. I will select detect CAF from SWE. And I will select from here, let me see, 25, I will select this one, I'll hit OK. I will go back into the cluster. It's harder difference when it's like that. Either so I can select it and I will hit code. Close. Everything is green. Close. Let's see. Set time and date. And tamper dot is gone. Oh yeah. Step 1, it's done. Next, step 2. Step 2 is to dismantle that cluster. Try to use the back part. First, let me scan this car, let me connect to this car with ISTA to see, where are you, ISTA? To see what errors I have in the cluster and if I will keep only the brain of the cluster, if I will have some errors or not. ICOM. There is a chance to have an error for checksum incorrect, incomplete. That error, if I had that, I don't know yet, still scanning, but if I had that error it's caused by the miles, because I changed the miles in the cluster. And checksum, exactly like it sounds, it's a check of the sum of miles, VIN and so on. So I think the R270 Plus is not doing the checksum calculation, but we need to see. Okay, so we have a bunch of errors. Let's see what errors we have. Not present, not present, not present, not present, not present, present. Instrument panel, kilometer, nah, that is not a problem. Not present, not present, not present. Everything is not present. I will delete fault memories. Okay, I like that. Zero fault memories. Fault memories zero, everything is green. I'm using an older version of ISTA that still it's showing you ACUs with yellow and they have error memories compared with the new version. I hate that. Every single ACU it's green, even if the ACU have errors or didn't have errors. I don't know what was in the mind of the guys that designed the new ISTA, but it's totally wrong from my point of view. Either way, now with zero fault memories, I will dismantle the cluster, I will remove the face, and I will switch on, switch off the ignition and rescan vehicle. Okay, now I will switch off the ignition and I will remove the face. Bye bye face. Switch on the ignition. All systems okay. Ignition switched on. That means the cluster is working. Set time and date. Let me select from here Combi. I already have 2 errors. Let me see what errors. Display switch off, fault on starting, fault in the alive monitoring of the display unit. I mean, I can live with those errors if they are not doing something else. Delete fault memories, ACU test, only 1 remained. Display switch off, fault on starting. Let me see, switch off the ignition. A better idea. Service function, sorry, body, voltage supply, power down command. Let me send this car to deep sleep. Power down command has been sent. I need to see this light going off on the hazard button. or most people know this button as park wherever I want button. The LED is off, so now I can switch on the ignition again. Start vehicle test. I will rescan the entire vehicle, set time and date. So I already see an error on camera module, on the ICM cluster, 8 errors in total, and the display itself for the multimedia, central information display, CID, display switch off, fault on starting, fault in alive monitoring of the display unit, instrument cluster, kilometer reading, not present, interface, outside temperature, ambient temperature, but they are not present. Why? Why? And fun fact, I didn't have these errors when I had the aftermarket cluster. Either way, for these errors, for these two errors that are present and are in cluster, I'll try to see if I'm able to find something to code out this monitoring. In ESIS, I will do that off camera. The main thing is to make this cluster work with the aftermarket one. So next step is to splice the wires and mount both clusters and see what happened. Something like that. Normally I would like to have a V cable to plug this part in a V cable and to have two heads, two plugs for two clusters, but I don't have here, and at work I didn't find something to help me, so at this time I will cut the wires and I will tie them together. Okay, let's start with this one, red with blue. Something like that. Let's see where it's red with blue here. Red with blue. I'll use a little bit of PVC tape. Good. And next one, let's go with brown wires, grounds. Okay, everything is connected. Now I will reconnect back the aftermarket cluster. Let's see the plugs here, like so, and on top here, stay here, I will reconnect the brain. I will switch on again the ignition. Engine oil level okay. Let me see, check control messages. Oh, nothing. Service required, nothing. Let me see if this cluster is still responding. ACU is not responding. But why? It's in conflict with this one. Let me disconnect this one from here and rescan it. ACU test. ACU not responding, so it's not that. Let me try the fiber optic connection. But from what I know, fiber optic is only for multimedia systems, so yeah, it's from the fiber optic connection. This is not a problem because I have a piece of fiber optic and I'm able to do a loop to use the fiber optic in both clusters, or I think this cluster is not using the fiber optic connection. Let me try to do something else. Okay, let's try again. ACU test. Yeah, it's responding. Programming date is messed up, 99, but this is not a big problem. Let me clear all the errors and see what will remain. Let me see what we have here. Check control messages, set time and date. Only 5 errors. Not bad, not bad. Let me see. Display switched off, okay. Fault in live monitoring display unit. And the same instrument about the miles, kilometer reading. Okay, and this cluster is working. That cluster is show 12:05 a.m. Here I don't have. Let me try to set up the time and date. Settings, time and date. Oh, something messy here. There is a conflict here. Maybe I can resolve this conflict from here. Let me see. Oh, I cannot change them. There is a conflict between these two clusters. This is, but the time is 12:12 a.m. and that one it's 12:07 a.m. 24 hours later. Why 24 hours later? Because I have encountered some problems. I have found out that what I want to do, it's quite complicated, it's not so easy, but I think it's doable. First thing that I encountered was the outside temperature sensor. If I will have both clusters connected on the outside temperature sensor, the value of the sensor will be divided by 2. So for example, if I will have 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, the clusters, both of the clusters will see 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, so it's not acceptable. If I will disconnect one cluster, doesn't matter which one, I will have the correct value. So for the moment, I want to leave the aftermarket cluster with the outside temperature sensor because I want to know to see what is the outside temperature, and I have wired a different temperature sensor for this cluster, because if I want to wire a sensor on the original cluster, always when I switch on the ignition, I have that minus 40 degrees Celsius warning message. This is the first thing. Second thing that I encountered is that this cluster will also need fiber optic connection, but if I will try to connect both clusters in the classic way on the fiber optic network, that means they will be in series with the vehicle, I will have some problems. For example, if I will connect this cluster first in the circuit, after that this one, and the line will return to the vehicle, the infotainment system, the navigation, after I will switch on the ignition, will restart. If I'll connect the original cluster first and second this one, so from the original cluster the fiber optic will go in this aftermarket cluster and will return to the vehicle, the navigation, the infotainment won't restart, but I think that the controls will move very funky, sometimes very slow, and the values won't appear always on the CBS data. So if I'll connect only the original cluster on the fiber optic, everything will work except the hour on the aftermarket cluster. So I have found out that the aftermarket cluster will use the fiber optic signal to set up the time. I am able to manually set up the time in the car and in the cluster, but they will never be synced. So I want to be synced. And I have found that if I will connect two fiber optic lines together, and I will create a Y connection, and I will use the vehicle fiber optic signal, and I will give that signal to original cluster and to the aftermarket, and only the original cluster will return the loop, will close the loop with the car. I will be able to set up the time in the vehicle, and the same time the cluster will adjust the time according to the vehicle. So my next step now is to create a Why fiber optic terminal on BMWs? Something that was never heard before. My plan is to have two fiber optic lines together, head to head, with one. From what I see, to be able to somehow align the terminals, I need to remove the insulation from the fiber optic terminals from a longer span to be able to align them more closer and more equal. So I think it's doable. I mean, I tested it and the connection was not correct, perfect, and it worked. So now I think I will cut insulation from here, something like that. Now I need to remove this insulation also. Now I need to align them and somehow I need to connect them together. And to connect them together, I will use some shrink tube, some heat shrinking tube. I will cut a straight face. They are okay. Need to stay like that. So my idea for this is to use some vacuum hose. I've got a piece like this one of vacuum hose and I will stick in one end my modified cables. Perfect. And now on this end I will be able to stick the original line from the car, and you see it's a perfect fit and will stay aligned inside exactly in the center of the tube. So this is the end result. Let's try it. Okay, so now from here I need to release this clip, and this one is the input signal, like so. I'll take my invention. I don't like it, I think it's too long. Let me check to see how deep. So I'll cut it like this. Let me check again how deep I need to go. Okay. Okay, now it's perfect. Let's see if we have one, it's weaker. We have signal, we have light, but I don't know if you can see. One, it's a little bit weaker. So the healthy signal, I will use it for the original cluster, and the weaker one I will use it like as an input signal, like so, on the aftermarket cluster. Connected. Connected. Navigation is alive. That means that the fiber optic signal is okay. And now let's see here. The time in the cluster is 10:32 and in the car is not set. So let me go in settings, time and date, time 12:00 AM. Hey, it's worked. it's 00 AM time 1 and 18 AM. 1 and 18 AM. Oh yeah, it's working. Another funny thing that I have found is, let me go back in vehicle information, vehicle status, check control messages, all systems okay. I love to see that. In the service required here, I have a problem with the rear brake pads and front brake pads. You see it? Rear brake pads, it's changing. And front brake pads the same. Front brake pads. Always is doing that. I don't know why. And another thing, I don't know if I mentioned, with the climate control, I've seen that the display and the LEDs for the climate control are flickering. The intensity of the light it's changing, and I suspect is because of the original cluster. On the original cluster you have a light sensor here somewhere. Even this have a light sensor, but it's fake. I don't know, it's not working. And if inside of the vehicle, inside of the cabin, it's darker, the intensity of the light will dim. If inside of the cabin it's more light than usual, the intensity of the cluster and the climate control will increase. I don't know if the infotainment, if the navigation system screen will be affected. But I have found out and coded out the option for that photo sensor. Is called photo sensor. Yeah. Okay. My next step is to create a case, a housing for this thing. I will arrange a little bit the harness here, and I will test it for a couple of days, weeks, to see if I will encounter some problems or everything will be okay. Okay, so my plan for a case will be to use the original back because it's perfect, and I will cut the plastic. After that I need the cover here. I hope it works. Okay, so I have here this adapter, and I'm able to use it on this tool. I think I need this, this and this tool. Nice. I need to do something else. Let me see how this is going. Not too great, not too terrible. I need to do some fine cuts to make it straight. And I also need to find the cover here. And after a couple of hours spent last night to build this case, I think this turned out to be okay. I've used a FRM casing that I needed to modify to end up with this one. So for the first try, in my opinion, I think I did very, very well. Compared to the original cluster, having this smaller thing, it's quite an achievement. Now my plan is to mount this on the car, use the car for a couple of days, weeks, to see if there are any other bugs, any other problems. If not, my plan is to find another cluster, another part cluster, to retrieve the fiber optic terminal and to add that fiber optic terminal here on this cluster, because I want to do the fiber optic split electronically, not hardwired like I did back there. That is a temporary solution that is used for testing. That is not a feasible thing, and that won't last. I know for sure that I have some losses back there on the fiber optic signal, but I hope the distances between the lines are shorter and I have a strong signal there. So enough with me talking, and let me try to mount this back on the car. Of course, this is not perfect yet. I still have that 2 internal errors for the LCD display, but maybe one day, if I won't have nothing else to do and I'll have a couple of free hours to spare, it's hard to find those, but if I'll do that, I will try to find the codings for that LCD error, if there are any, to make this cluster being green without any error in the tree from Ista. So who knows? I have a tunnel from back there. Even I can put the module here, and also I have a bunch of room down there. If I will put the module here, I think it will be something like that. I will use some zip tie to keep it in place on this duct. I think this will be a good idea, because in the summer when I will use the AC, this duct will be cold. So we'll keep that module at the acceptable temperature. But I need to think and to see how deep the cluster is going, and I think it's going enough deep to not pinch the fiber optic lines, because they are quite fragile. Okay, I will try that. Here is the plug of the cluster with this sensor, temperature sensor. Next, this is the fiber optic plug. And so, this will go in the aftermarket cluster, and this also. Okay, now the final moment. Ignition switched on. Everything seems to be okay. You can see I don't have the time there. There is a time here. That is the cluster time. I don't like that M logo. I prefer to be empty. But let me set up the time here. So I need to go in settings, time and date. Time, what is the time? It's 10 and 4 minutes. And time changed here, 10 and 4 minutes, perfect. But it's PM. 10, let's see. AM, PM. Perfect. Another thing, let me see here, go back, vehicle info, vehicle status, service required. Yeah, I'll still have this conflict, and I test this off camera. I unplug the aftermarket cluster and that thing is not happening. So the aftermarket cluster is sending something in the CAN network related to that information. To get rid of that, I think I'll need a CAN filter to filter everything, to block everything that this cluster will send back into the vehicle, because this cluster will need information from the vehicle and that's all. I don't need this cluster to send things inside of my vehicle. I rescan the car and I have a ton of errors because I've disconnected, reconnected, disconnected, reconnected. So I won't go through them. I will delete them. Okay, and I have the classic errors on the ICM, 360 the view cameras or rear view cameras, and the cluster. Display switch off fault on starting, fault in the live monitoring of the display unit. These two errors are internal errors for the cluster. Interface instrument, instrument panel interface. These errors are not present, but they will reappear every single time. It's about the mileage and outside temperature, ambient temperature. So for the moment, these are not bothering me. Don't need a bank, no unfunded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now